Major Garrett is at the RNC meeting site in Hollywood, Florida, just north of Miami. And so, Major, we saw this more reasoned Donald Trump on the stump last, it would appear, for about 24 hours. So looking at this meeting today between his top aides and RNC officials, what do we expect to happen?
So let's not over-dramatize this, Josh. This is a presentation from the Trump campaign. Its senior advisors, campaign convention manager Paul Manafort just arrived here in Hollywood, Florida. He'll be leading the Trump delegation to essentially lay out with a PowerPoint presentation the Trump path to the nomination, which is the magic number of 1,237 delegates through the primaries yet to be conducted. That's a simple mathematical presentation the Trump campaign will make. And it is going to be interpreted by the RNC members who are here. These are activists at the state level. They're the ones who created so many of the rules that Donald Trump now in some cases so vociferously criticizes. So there will be a little bit of a dynamic of unease in the room because these RNC members feel to a certain degree they're a bit under siege from the Trump campaign. They know why they created the rules in their states, whether it's a caucus, a convention, or a primary, and they're proud of that. And they want to defend those rules and are getting a little bit frustrated, that's putting it mildly, with the constant verbal assaults from Trump about those very same rules. Nevertheless, the Trump campaign wants to come here, show its respect, and say, you know what, we're the one who mathematically can win this nomination. Ted Cruz can't say that, John Kasich can't say that. So there is an aspect of the Trump campaign coming here to try to create a psychological bandwagon effect for these RNC members, saying, look, it's going to happen or it's likely to happen. We'd like your support. It's going to be that kind of dynamic in the room. A presentation from the Trump campaign and probably a slightly frosty reception from the RNC rank and file. I
want to ask you about those rules in just a moment, but you mentioned Ted Cruz and John Kasich, their campaigns making similar pitches to RNC officials. Considering that they have, the mathematical paths do not exist for those candidates, what were their pitches entail? What did their pitches entail yesterday?
So Cruz's presentation was essentially this. We can block and we will block Donald Trump from getting the magic number of 1,237 delegates. And at that point, all those who are having either buyer's remorse about Trump in the first place or were never sold on the Trump campaign can spring into action on the convention floor. And at a contested convention, Ted Cruz did argue yesterday and will relentlessly argue, I am the true principled conservative. Most activists in the modern Republican Party at the state level are also conservatives. And Cruz will say, once we get through that first ballot and Donald Trump doesn't make it, then you are free, in many cases, though not all, to switch your allegiances, go for the conservative, the proven conservative, and support me. That's the Cruz path to the nomination. For Kasich, his pitch was much more precise, which is this. If you look at the polling data now, Kasich is the only one who runs ahead of Hillary Clinton, the likely Democratic nominee, especially after the New York primary. What Kasich argued is, Cruz is too conservative for most of you, or he can't beat Hillary. He may be conservative enough for you, but he still can't beat Hillary. I can. And electability, when you look at contested conventions historically, has been the #1 determining factor for delegates in deciding who the nominee ultimately is. When nobody wins it outright, that becomes the deciding factor. Who has the best chance of winning in November? Kasich says, that's going to be me. I will just say, Josh, here at a press conference yesterday, Cruz was decidedly and newly acerbic about this contention from Kasich, saying he's really going to come to the convention in July saying, I've won one state and I've lost 49, and that makes me the perfect nominee for the Republican Party. So you can begin to see a little bit of the Cruz uneasiness with this pitch from Kasich, and the verbal jousting has begun on that score.
Again, we should mention that the Texas senator did say once derisively of the idea of a contested convention, it is the great hope of the Republican establishment. It is now the only hope for either Cruz or Kasich. But to the rules that you discussed, the rules that are on the table, and you've said this is usually an obscure meeting that would not merit the coverage that it is now seeing. We hear things like Rule 40B, and if that remains in place, John Kasich has no hope whatsoever. What are the rules on the table right now?
So despite all appearances, Josh, I want to assure our good viewers, I'm not on a junket. I really am not. This is an important, serious news story I'm covering here in Hollywood, Florida.
As always, Major. As always.
So it is an obscure meeting, the spring meeting of the Republican National Committee.
Right. Ignore the sun rising on. Yes,
right.
It's lovely.
Right. I will not be kayaking in 30 minutes. I really won't be kayaking in 30 minutes, I guarantee you. So this meeting is not usually covered as extensively as it is now. And there is a sort of reason for that, because the convention at its spring meeting doesn't really think about, the committee doesn't think about changing its rules. And for a while, I would say a week or two ago, there were some proposals that were going to be brought forth and probably will be brought forth here to change the convention rules, but that's not going to happen. RNC Chairman Reince Priebus and those who are the most influential members of the RNC have made it clear this is not the time to in any way, shape, or form change the existing rules for the convention as it approaches in July. Reince Priebus has made it very clear internally that doing so would only invite more criticism from Trump and Trump's supporters. So some proposals will rise here. They will be swiftly and resolutely tabled. So all the rules that currently govern the convention will apply. You mentioned 40B. Let's talk about that for just a second. That is a rule that says you cannot be recognized for a convention speech, demonstration, or full-blown nomination unless you have won in 8 states. The old rule was 5 states. 8 became the rule to deny Ron Paul what he wanted at the 2012 convention was a nominating speech, a little bit of a demonstration and celebration of what Ron Paul achieved in 2012. Well, the hierarchy of the RNC didn't want that to happen. They swiftly changed the rules and infuriated the Ron Paul people in that process. So 40B would seemingly rule out John Kasich because he's only won 1 state. So that's something that might be under consideration as the convention draws closer. We don't know yet. What we do know for a fact, Josh, is nothing is going to change here because the hierarchy has said, leave it the way it is. Do not invite more criticism from Trump. We'll decide this and revisit it 1 week before the July convention in Cleveland when the Rules Committee will finally determine what the game rules are and how they will be followed.
What we also know is I believe there are a pair of water skis with your name on them just behind you, Major. So, so you get out there and you keep beating the bushes for us, Major Garrett. Thank you.
See you.